Great. Well, first of all, welcome everyone to the very first meeting for the Clackamette Park Master Plan. My name is Kurt Lango. I'm with Lango Hansen Landscape Architects. And before we get started, I'd like to just do a round of introductions. Maybe people from the city. Kendall, if you could introduce both here and virtually. Thank you. And along with me is Brian Martin, also with our office. Well, again, first of all, thank you for sharing your evening with us. This is a hybrid meeting, so we have both people virtually and then people here in the audience. And for those of you virtually, we have about 10 people here at the Commission chambers. As I mentioned, our firm is Lango Hansen Landscape Architects. I just wanted to mention briefly the work that we've done in Oregon City. Actually, it spans about 2 decades. We worked on Wesley Lynn Park many years ago, and that went on to work on Kanema Park, John Storm Park right next to Clackamette Park. We finished Tyrone Woods Park not too long ago. Then Brian just finished Filbert Run Park. So we have a long history. We like to think of Oregon City as our second home. And so when we were notified that we would be working on the Clackamette Park master plan, we were really thrilled about that. What I'd like to do today is go through the agenda. Go to the next slide. And just let you know kind of what's in store for this meeting. First of all, we've already gone through the introductions. Wanted to talk a little bit about the master plan schedule, both this meeting and where we go from here. Then we prepared some different drawings, some slides of the existing conditions out at Clackamette Park. And many of you I know are very familiar with it, but we thought just for those that may not be, we wanted to get everyone up to speed. And then we're going to have a public discussion. We're going to have a series of questions that we are asking you all. Then we'll talk a little bit about next steps. So for today's meeting, just want to kind of set the stage. Although we'll be doing some talking, this is also an opportunity for us to do a lot of listening. I'm not sure if any of you, both here and virtually, have filled out the online survey, but I think we have close over 350, maybe 370 people that have responded to that survey. So for those of you that haven't done that, we encourage you, if you have, talk to your neighbors, friends. We'd like to get that up even higher if we can. That survey ends in a couple weeks. So today we're going to be sharing some information, but we'll be posing some questions to you, some of which you, if you did take the survey, there'll be similar questions. At this point, we're not sharing any plans of future development. Both Brian and I come in to this process as an open book. We don't have any preconceived ideas. And we really want to listen to you, take the information that we've gotten from the survey. Brian's done a great job of also doing some targeted stakeholder interviews. And then we'll take all of that information and we'll put it into a series of concept plans. So there will probably be 2 or 3 different plans. Each plan will have different components, different ideas arranged perhaps differently on the site. We'll do a similar process that we're doing right now. We'll take that out for a survey. We'll do stakeholder interviews. We'll also meet one-on-one with people as well as have a public forum. We'll take all that information and we'll combine those 3 ideas into a single master plan. The beauty of having a master plan document that we can then go out for fundraising, we can go out for grants, we can put it as part of the city's budget and basically begin to implement that plan. So are there any questions about that? Any questions about the process? Let's go to the next step. So even though we're concentrating on the Clackamette Park, I think it's always good just to step back and see the park in the context of the overall system. So, of course, it's the biggest star there in the upper left-hand corner. Now, Oregon City has probably just shy of 30 parks kind of spread out throughout the park system, all shapes and sizes, all different programmatic elements. What we wanted to note, though, was Willamette Falls. We know that Clackamette Park is your only regional park, but certainly Willamette Falls will be a regional attraction when that comes to fruition. So thinking about the proximity, ultimately potential connections, but we wanted to share this kind of overall plan with you. I think the next slide, if we go to the next one, I'll have Brian just kind of zoom in a little bit and talk a little bit more about Clackamette Park.
And I think the first thing I just want to note before I forget about this plan is where the last plan north was up, like typical plans that we're used to looking at. This plan, and then moving forward, north is to the left, just so that we can get the most plan. So looking at this plan, what we start to see is just the proximity of Clackamette Park, which is the orange line here is the city limits of Oregon City. Clackamette Park is tucked right into the corner, but it's obviously then by virtue right next to West Lynn, downtown Gladstone, and proximate to downtown Oregon City, right across the highway from Clackamette Cove. And then just to the south is John Storm Park. Before we dive into some of the plans that speak to some of the specific characteristics and elements of the site itself, briefly just the history of the park, how the park has served the community throughout the years, and just what is the character of the park and what it has. An interesting series of photos on the left side, historic images. The first one, probably can't see it from the number back there, it's from 1930, so it's a good 5 years before this was actually a city park. This was right around the time when the property was deeded from Clackamas County over to Oregon City. And then 40 years later, similar shot, same type of activities. And just at the very end of last year, same perspective, look at the bridge. To see same space, different uses same use over time. And this whole collection of photos looking at, whether it's cruising down by the riverside, the teddy bear parade, all these different activities, the Oregon Trail game run that started and ended at the park itself, that the park is able to host. And there's the more passive events, just image of the open space, how other people come and use the park during quiet times. And the image at the bottom right just starting to hint at some other issues that we'll be talking about today, and how that park nestled into the river, like we saw on the last slide, the confluence of the Clackamas and the Willamette site conditions. Just to give everybody a bit of context, this bold black line is the boundary of the proper. This is 25-acre site shown in green here. Adjacent to the site, shown in orange, is also city-owned property with some deed restrictions in terms of what it can be developed as. So while it's not necessarily part of the park today, it's definitely something worth considering as we move forward with this master plan, how that could be used for park activity. You see the two, just one more thing to note, the two different colors of green. The darker green starts to show the tree groves and tree canopy within the park. So we have a series of slides here that are going to look at the different types of circulation, the different types of amenities and uses within the park. This first one looks at the vehicular circulation, how vehicles arrive at the site and how they get around, where they park. Large orange arrow is the main entrance to the park. There are about, where the number 2 is, there's about 50 auto parking spaces there, kind of between the horseshoe areas and the skate park area and the restroom. And that towards the Clackamette River is where the boat parking takes place. There's a small amount of automobile parking there, total of around 45 stalls for boat trailers to park. And there is the boat ramp that leads to the Clackamette River, which is currently closed at this time. Go to the west of the main entry. There's a paved road that leads down to the RV park, which is open year-round and hosts 36 stalls. Each of those have electrical hookup, but there is no sewer hookups. That is at the sewer dump. In this next slide, we're starting to look at the pedestrian circulation throughout the site, highlighted in this orange tone. There are two, I would say, main entrances into the park if you're arriving by foot. The first one is right adjacent to the main vehicular entrance. The second one is right across the street from the hotel. That connection down to most all of the paths highlighted here are paved. Below the boat ramp, it seems like it's probably an old road. It's pretty wide, but there are ballers that restrict vehicular. As it turns the corner and heads to the RV park, it's a deteriorated asphalt path. It's really mostly gravel at this point. Meanders just beyond the RV park, between that and the river. And up by number 2, as it heads through that tree grove, it continues to be asphalt, and at this time, it's been interrupted by a lot of tree roots that are making. One thing that's not denoted by a different color, but is very important for this site, is the amount of, depending on the level of the water, the amount of accessible shoreline. If water was low, there's a lot of exposed shoreline that you can get down and walk. Highlighting here is starting to look at the site structures and the site amenities, the buildings that are on site. Alluded to earlier, all of you are very familiar with this site, but I just wanted to review it so that we all remember. There's the park, there's rentable, reservable shelters on site. There's the both covered and uncovered horseshoe pits. Restroom. And as in the photo earlier, there's one feature that's not built, but it's noted by number 4. It's just that open lawn area, which is number 8 and 9 are there's a small kiosk near the RV park, and then there's a larger covered area that was by some of the students from slide. You mentioned, we're all very aware of the proximity to the river. This starts to highlight the flooding activity on the site itself. Blue is the 1-year flood, so that's the average flooding that happens on any given year. But basically rings around the RV park. 2-year flood covers a good part of the site, and then with the 10-year flood, we start to encompass almost a majority of the site. Kind of looking back across the street at that city-owned property, you can start to see that is really outside of that 10-year floodplain, so it sits higher than the majority of Clackamette.
It's worth noting just with this slide that there are some jurisdictional overlays. There's the Willamette Greenway overlay, which does limit some things that we can do. But then also there's the city NROD, which is the Natural Resource Overlay District. So we get farther down into thinking about the improvements, the amount of hard space, those will be things that we'll be referring to and thinking about as we plan for those activities.
We highlighting the tree canopy on this slide, and it's back in summer of 2020, the Parks Department hired a professional arborist company to come in and just inventory basically all the trees that are within the park. Along with that, assess and the health of the canopy and the health of the individual tree, broken down into 3 different categories, generally good, fair, and poor. Fairly self-descriptive. Good trees are those that are in healthy condition, growing regularly, full canopies, good coverage. Fair trees might exhibit some amount of dieback and some inadequate new growth. And then the poor trees, there's an increased amount of dieback and broken branches. It's not so much that they are, I mean, it can almost look like, you know, the red trees, stop sign, you've got to cut it down, but it's not indicating that necessarily. And taking a step back and looking where in the park they're located, they, in some cases, if it's not right in the middle of things, can definitely present bad opportunities. And worth noting that, as I mentioned, this was commissioned by Parks, so they're well aware of the condition of these trees and they're monitoring it.
So again, you know, we have actually spent a lot of time down in Clackamette Park, but I think for those of you that have lived and visited it often, I think both here in the audience, but also virtually, we'd be interested if, you know, anything that we presented, any comments that you have, anything that you think we missed or should add to these list of slides, just so that we have a good basis for the design. That's a good question. And
yes, yeah, August 2020.
anyone that was yeah.
At that point, I forgot to touch on just a quick overview of the tree species there. It was about 40%, 45% of the trees with bark are the black cottonwood. And next in line is the Doug fir, maybe about 10 or maple, and then a number of smaller species.
And you probably all know the black cottonwoods tend to be more susceptible during the ice storm. I think as we begin to get in and take a look at the improvements, we can begin to kind of zero in on some of those trees or taking a look at close. We can add that. That's
Karen, go ahead.
Oh, okay, Kurt, I'm sorry, I came in a few minutes late. Is this the current design that we're looking at?
yes. This is the existing design. So I think tonight's meeting is more of a listening exercise, just with the material that we presented. we do have some questions, but we won't be presenting any plans or concepts until we've had a chance to talk to everyone, take a look at the survey, which closes mid-March, and then we'll bring back ideas.
Okay, so moving the boat ramp and moving the RV park are for future planning.
Yeah, that will be at the next meeting. I think we felt it was important just to start with a good basis of design and listening to the public, the community, and stakeholders. So that's where we're starting right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions online?
Oh, yes, we do. We have one.
Okay. More?
On, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, one thing I was looking for is maybe something on these maps to showcase like public transportation places, like where people can get off and get into the park, and what does access look like, and maybe something around like how traffic flows in and out, so like crossings, etc. That'd be helpful.
That's great. That's a great idea, and I think it's something that we can, we'll continue to kind of embellish these drawings, and I think we'll get that on, because I think the transit, how people actually get to the park, connectivity, walkability, I think is really important. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and like accessibility stuff too. I don't know if I missed that, but for people who have issues with walking, like what does the access to the park look like, and what features are available currently, or what is missing currently?
We'll do that for the next round.
So one thing we have to remember now is that there's going to be possibly 1,000 people living at the cove there. There's probably 500 there now, but when it's all built out, there's going to be like 1,000 people. This is going to be their park too, so let's all keep that in mind. This isn't just the city, but so I hope that you're contacting those folks is it the Edgewater, I think it is called, because you'd see what they would like to see there too, because this is kind of their neighborhood park that we're all doing around here now. So, okay.
Jeremy, go ahead. Jeremy, are you there?
Might be on mute. We can move forward.
We can't hear you, Jeremy. No, we can't.
Move on, and maybe you could also. Well, we can move on, and then we can hook. Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, we can hear you, Jeremy.
Good afternoon or good evening. Is this the time that we talk about the amenities and what we'd like to see or keep?
That's in short order. We'll be there in about 5 or 10 minutes. So we have a series of questions, and that's actually one of the questions.
Excellent.
So
Sorry for causing a delay. I got my 11-year-old here wants to speak as well, so we will wait until
Okay.
then. Thanks.
perfect. No, looking forward to that. Great. So we have another question from gentleman here.
Yeah, so on that last slide, on the very south end of the park, just a quick question, who owns the dock that juts out into the river in front of the hotel
For
there?
John Storm Park?
Is that what that is?
Yeah, so that's part of the city park.
I just was wondering.
Let's go to the next slide. So this is where we it's really more of kind of listening for us, and for those of you that took the public survey, some of these questions you may recognize, but we felt it was important to kind of get the word out and hear what neighbors and citizens had to say. We're going to start out, first of all, with just kind of overall park character. We'd like to hear from you on your thoughts, and there will be some subsequent slides that are kind of associated with that. The second one was we'll really focus in on the site amenities. We really want to hear what your priorities are for what you would like to see in the park. That's both what's existing that you would like enhanced, or perhaps there's new amenities that you'd like to see. And then the third one, we felt it was really important, just the river access, just to have a conversation on that particular part, kind of set aside from what's happening inside with the other amenities. So let's go to park character first. So the question, and it may seem a little bit open-ended, but how would you like the park to feel? And if you go to the next slide, like to almost kind of think about if you had a friend or someone that hadn't been to Clackamette Park before, you'd say, oh, we have to go down to Clackamette Park because it's just, and how would you want to describe Clackamette Park? Not necessarily how it is right now, but what would you see as the vision? And maybe it's not just one thing, maybe it's 2 or 3 of these different kind of elements. How would you describe it to someone? So certainly we have some words up there which are more kind of natural. We have kind of open. Would you like to see it more open than it is right now? More of a natural character, wooded, definitely family friendly. So if there are any other kind of catchwords that you'd like to see up there, please let us know. So would love to hear from you on this.
I was a city commissioner about 3-4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I did, and that's why you're probably going to hear a lot from me today, but I
Love it.
I did a lot of, in fact, I did my own kind of personal master plan of this,
Mm-hmm.
and so I got pretty involved with it. So, but the thing that I think we got to realize that we do all these things, but it's got to have some kind of organization on it. I think that's one of the key words too, is having it organized and what flows good and stuff, whatever you do here, so.
Yeah.
But, yeah, because right after I did mine, I think we hired, and I didn't know if, was it you that did the last one?
No.
Okay, because we did hire a firm to do this, just
Sure.
through, so, I'm not sure if you're using that or seen it or.
Yeah, we have seen it, and I think there were a lot of good ideas. And if you helped out or you shed some light on that plan, I guess what were some of the qualities of that plan, if you were to kind of describe it to others that you'd like to see as part of this new master plan?
I'm trying to remember what it, what it was. I think I like the idea of, you know, how they obviously moved, they kept the RV park, but moved it over, you know, to the, next to McDonald's. And the boat ramp was an issue just because of how it ate up a lot of the park and stuff, but, I know that's probably coming up in the conversation, you know. I think just having it all organized is the whole deal, because when you come into a park and, you know, here's the traffic over here. We've got to, when I did mine was more pedestrian oriented.
Okay,
And I think that's probably a key word up here is
okay, great,
pedestrian,
okay.
instead of so automobile oriented. So, so how you separate those two and still have a boat ramp and an RV park and fishing and all this stuff and horseshoes and, you know, so that's what I mean, you know, if it can be organized and you don't see all of that, but you still have it all, you know, I think that's the key, so.
Great, so kind of clear lines of circulation, thinking about the conflicts between vehicular, kind of activity and pedestrian activity.
And have it safe, there's, key word there is safe too.
Okay, safe.
Because, like I say, you've got travel lanes, especially to that, boat ramp, and you got kids going back and forth, and the boat ramp's right there, the skate park's right there.
Yeah.
So, it's a challenge. I mean, we've been fortunate so far, we haven't had any problems down there with anybody getting hurt. Except maybe during the family festival and stuff, we had a lot of people down there, and once in a while it'd be a little.
Great, okay. Those are good key words, I think, that we got out of that. Pedestrian, circulation, safety.
You know, and it's a key word that you may not be able to find at all parks, but I think unique. You guys can create something that's unique. I think that's a draw, and it's also something that you won't find in other places, which is the key word. So if you have the opportunity.
That's great. That's a great word.
Hey, I wonder if I could just, I'm Bruce Schnepp, and I just wanted to add something to what Luke said, which is, you know, it actually really is now kind of unique, and it is safe, and all those adjectives that you listed apply. And so the point I want to kind of make is, by some magical coming together of circumstances and people, Clackamette Park is an amazing place. It's a place, you know, you might not want to change like everything. Like you might want to add this or that, but you know, it somehow works. It's safe. Vehicles get in and out. People are incredibly respectful around the boat ramp with, you know, kids running around, and, you know, you have a gold mine here. So you might not want to change like everything, like kind of radically, for what it's worth.
Thank you so much. We had someone else here in the audience.
Yeah, it's a nature escape. That whether you're coming from Southeast Portland or from Oregon City or from any one of the cities, it's one of the few spots where you can access two rivers and just kind of go down there and be down there. My wife and I, actually, one of our first dates, we met up for lunch and walked along the two rivers, you know, down along and under the bridge and stuff. And it just, to be able to get that with the interstate and Highway 99 and all of that close, where you just feel like you're in a different space. I mean, they're trying to reclaim a lot of that for the Falls area, and there's already some of that for this area. Not, you know, we still want to do it for the Falls, but I think that's a really key component, to have that water on two sides.
I would like to add to that real quick as well. I think that just builds further on maybe the keyword of unique. I think this park is truly special in the city and has the opportunity to really be a destination for Clackamas County, Multnomah County, and beyond.
I'm gonna kind of take off on what this gentleman was saying here, but relates to the property next to McDonald's, because I know we'll be talking about that at some point. But always had a lot of pressure on me because people wanted to come in and develop that property. You know, and I kept saying, well, you know, no, because you come across that Gladstone Bridge, you know you're in Oregon City, because now you can look across to the right there, see that river and see the falls and see the Arch Bridge. There's a building there, 5-story hotel or whatever, that's gone forever. Gives you the opportunity. You know you're in Oregon City when you cross that bridge and you look down there and you see the that some stuff down there. I want to make sure we keep that.
Thank you for your patience. Karen, go ahead when you're ready.
I'm going to echo a little bit what Brian said. I really do think that the RV park should move up to the graciously called gravel lot, formerly known as the sewer treatment plant and the fire department training tower. And I have grown up in that park, literally. I've launched boats, and one of the things I really want to hear is from our fisher folk, because I'm not sure that boat launch is all that necessary out of that space. I've picnicked there, partied there. My son and friends used to have wars with boffers. For those of you that played medieval warfare with PVC pipes covered with foam. It is a beautiful open space, and I love it for the open space and the natural space. I'm not a big fan about continuing it as a launch unless a fisher person convinces me. And again, I agree that the RV park should move up to the gravel. It is a large park that I've seen populated by many, many, many people. And it has multiple uses that I think are being limited by the amount of paving that we've put in to allow for the boat launch and the parking. The end.
Aaron, if you were just to kind of think about this question, and you may have mentioned this, but how you'd like the park to feel. So I think you said open space one. Are there any other kind of words or ways that you'd like to describe, as this park evolves, things that you see on that list, or maybe things that you've heard tonight?
These are probably stale words, but open, natural, green. It has a beautiful view. I have some wonderful pictures of geese and goslings floating down the Clackamas River from days that I spent down there. Pictures of squirrels. It is a beautiful natural space, and I would love to see it return to a more natural space. The skate park's wonderful, and if you can figure out how to rent horseshoes, the horseshoe pit's no big deal. But I would really like to see as much of the space as possible return to natural. And
More?
Okay.
Tim, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to see it become more pedestrian. I know you have a path on the inside of the trees along the Willamette, but there's that dirt road that could be enhanced more so that we could ride bikes and walk on the outside closer to the water, and that would be really nice to enhance the pedestrian and biking around the park. I have to go ahead and agree with Karen in regards to the boat launch. Do we have any data on how many boats, what's a daily average of boats being launched there during the summertime? And frankly, for me, owning a drift boat, I wouldn't launch on there because I think it's dangerous with the current that goes right there. And there's no place to get out and relax before you jump in your boat when you back it down into that water. So I'm wondering if it's necessary, if indeed we could just enhance the Oregon City Marina boat launch rather than working on this one. And lastly, I think that repurposing some of the space, not all the space, but some of the space that is dedicated to the horseshoe pits to picnic areas would be very nice. That's all I got.
Yeah, one more.
This is
Jeremy?
Jeremy. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So I think on the park character here, I'd like to speak to the active and family friendly. So over the course of the last several years, I've taken, I don't know, a dozen probably children down to the boat launch to either surf on surfboards or surf in kayaks. It is just fabulous. There's no whitewater park anywhere near the metropolitan Portland area. So the closest one is in Bend. But my 11-year-old is here and he's a little nervous to speak tonight, but it is the highlight of his summer. So the wave comes in, you know, late summertime, late summer, and then it's going through the end of October. But there's videos that I sent to you guys of him in a wetsuit in the middle of October in 50-degree water, you know, having the time of his life. So the boat ramp, I don't see a whole lot of people launching boats off of it either, but I'd like to make plug for it. Is a wonderful recreational opportunity, and as Jeremy Carpel said a little bit earlier, as he boats and surfs it with us as well, it's a destination. So you'll see on a sunny weekend day, you'll see 30 plus people using that, as many people that use the skate park. And the only part that really needs to remain is the part that's underwater. And that's the part that makes the wave. And so getting rid of the parking and the other parts, there's probably some room for negotiation there, but I'll leave it with, it has been one of the joys of our family and our family's friends to go and recreate on the wave there in Clackamette Park.
That's great to hear.
I'm a fisherman, and I've used that boat ramp for many, many years until just recently, you know, it's been undermined, and don't know that you could ever fix the boat ramp the way the river, if you can't dredge it, you can't. I mean, I do marine construction, my normal job, and a lot of dredging, and that's the biggest problem with the boat ramp. The access, there's not a lot of boat access here. At one time, there were more boat trailers parked around there 10 years ago during the springtime, fall time, than there ever, you know, was. You have Meldon Bar, you have Clackamette Park, and then you have Sportscraft. Sportscraft has room for about 20 boats. And trucks and boats nowadays, they just don't have enough parking. I mean, they park all the way down that road, all the way to Clackamette Park during the peak of the fishing season. there definitely needs to be, I would think, some sort of place to relocate it. But it's a really tough one there. I mean, just the way the river's changed. As far as the RV park goes, it's in the floodplain. I mean, the river right now is at 11.5. It's going to be at 15 by Sunday. The RV park's going to be under. You have all that electrical. It needs to just move, and it shouldn't just move a little bit. It should move like a 10-year average, because it floods every couple of years. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But between the two, you know, the boat ramp's a really tough one. The RV park, I think you can probably figure that out pretty easy. Boat ramp issue, I mean, we really miss it, especially, you know, once this river starts dropping. People need a place to launch their boats. And I know it makes a wave, but what's making the wave is all the infill.
Sure.
And it's just, it's a tough situation. But I don't know that you'll ever be able to have a boat ramp there again unless there's dredging.
Well, I think those are good points, and I think we're going to probably talk more about those because we have some other questions that are kind of focused specifically on river access. But why don't we move to the, if there's nothing else, Steve? Yeah.
I appreciate that you just indicated we move on, because I was trying to stay with the character piece.
Sure.
And I couldn't figure out how to jam in the words, you know, aquatic access is important. Open access is one thing, but aquatic access is critical as well. And we can talk about some of the details we heard about earlier here, but I think that's a critical piece for a lot of folks.
I appreciate that, and yeah, definitely understand that. So if we go to the next question. I mean, I think we've heard a little bit about this, but we definitely want to kind of expand upon it and also hear from others. What sort of amenities should be a priority at Clackamette Park? We know that it can't be all things to all people. We only have a certain amount of space right there. But just thinking about what you have or maybe what's not there right now. I know that some people have talked about it being a unique park. So are there certain things that would kind of promote that as well? So if you go to the next slide. And just as a refresher, you already saw this. I won't spend a lot of time, but the park has the skate park, the horseshoe pits, kind of general open space. I guess you could call it a playground with a single swing set. But picnic shelters, interpretive kiosks, and then the RV park as well. So we go this slide. So then here just gives you another list of amenities. And for those of you that took the survey, we had a similar list. We've actually expanded that list as well. So you see some other items on here. So and I think this also can include some river access items, but if there were 2 or 3 of these components or park elements that you think are really essential to be part of the park, maybe you could talk about those and maybe elaborate on them as well. Or if you see something that shouldn't be on the list, we'd like to hear about that as well.
Thank you. I have a heartfelt place for things like interpretive signage, and I know there are issues with maintaining it and all those kind of things, but we've talked about the unique nature of where the park sits and where the opportunity for interpretive signage at a lot of different levels is high there if we can figure out how to do it without costing the city a fortune to maintain it. I mean, I think that's the real challenge. So we miss some opportunities there now, I think, that we haven't really reached out and tried to enhance to the level that they probably should be. I'll hold off on some of the other things when we get to some of the other discussions.
I think just interpretive, there's a number of both natural systems, cultural history. There's a lot of ways that we can interpret the site.
You know, we have it's a 25-acre park down there. And you look at everything almost everything on there is there now. except for the pickleball and the disc golf. And, you know, that would bring a whole different atmosphere. It's not a sports complex. And I think that's probably what's different about this park is as big as it is, we don't have tennis courts and pickleball courts and stuff like that. And I think that's the character of this park. This park is known for its waterways and its, you know, its river access and its RV park and stuff. And I think what we have there right now is just great. It just needs to be organized and updated and make it work a little better. So, but I like everything that's on there except probably those two. So.
Karen, go ahead.
Okay, and I will say, number one, restrooms, expanded, maintained, not quite what they are right now. But yes, I'm agreeing. It needs to be a natural area. It could be a community gathering place. I am not a fan of adding a playground to it. The picnic shelter should be maintained. I'm going through the list here. The rest of it is, yes, open space. Sorry, back and forth. Lawn areas, trails, places where, because I have seen like 3 and 4 different community groups gathering down there at a time. There's only one picnic area, but there are tables here and there. It is a gorgeous natural space, and I would really advocate that we focus on the natural areas. And
Thank you. That's good to hear. Anyone else online? Okay, so I guess, so I appreciate the feedback that we've gotten. And so it seems like what is out there, definitely continue to take a look at that, enhance that where we can. And then I guess we heard a couple comments about maybe it not being more active focused, but really taking a look at the kind of natural areas, kind of open space picnic areas.
I don't know if this is coming up in this section or if it's the next section, but once again, in discussion of the boat ramp and just kind of the amenity that features or that contributes to the park. Because it's not really listed here, but Jeremy had mentioned it earlier, and just the natural wave that it creates and the what it's supplied to the Portland metro areas, kayaking and surfing communities, the ability to have a place to recreate that's also a natural place. It's very different from, you know, pickleball or disc golf or something where you are actually adding something to the spot. It happens to be a naturally formed feature. And it's kind of a amazing phenomenon. I mean, I think as Jeremy said, the closest comparable spot is in Bend, and it's something that the city there spent, you know, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to create that park. And I know it was not an intention of the park here, but it's kind of a happy accident in what it has created and what it's built as a truly unique feature to this park for the city and beyond.
So I think that's actually a good segue to the last question that we have, and I think we've heard people talk about the wave and other parts of kind of access to the river. So if you want to go to the last slide. So we've also kind of expanded this kind of access question, if you go to the next one. And just kind of a refresher, and I think to the best of our ability, we tried to kind of show these different river access elements, maybe not exactly in this place on some of them, but we're showing the existing boat launch, number one. Then there was a study done several years ago about relocating the boat launch and about 350 feet downstream. So that is where number two is. So there were engineering plans that were done for that, and that's something that as we begin to take a look at options, different concepts, will be one thing that we consider. Number three, I guess a human-powered craft launch. I think we've been talking a lot about the wave, certainly swimming, general shoreline access, and then fishing as well. So some of these are, again, a little bit more kind of zones, so they're not just in that exact place. But the question, if we go to the next slide, Brian. Just one more. We thought it was just helpful just to point out some of the other boat ramps that are in the area. We've been talking a lot about what's happening in our park, but on the Willamette, the Sportcraft Landing, the Meldrum Bar Park, and then further down the Cedar Oak boat ramp too. So just kind of thinking about river access, particularly the boat launches, thinking about kind of what's happening. So the last slide, if you go to, so this question is, what sort of river access best serves the community? And again, it's thinking about, are there things that are not on this list or things that we should really be thinking about in terms of river access? What's important? What should we keep as we begin to take a look at these different master plan options?
Thank you. I think that I'll just start out directly and say that we've had a lot of discussion about the wave, and that's a really, as someone said, unique and interesting factor that has shown there, and something we probably ought to try to utilize and work with. At the same time, we do need boat access. We do need a boat launch at this location. We've talked about Sportcraft, and I agree with this gentleman here. I don't know how many in this room are good enough to launch a boat there at Sportcraft. You can probably launch the boat, but I don't know if you can get your truck back out of there after you've done it because it's so small. And there isn't really any way you're going to expand it, at least not, I've been around that boat ramp for a long time, and I'm not sure where you go to expand that. So that access is about 20 boats, as he said. That's about all you're going to have. Meldrum Bar is another location. Obviously, it's got a lot of room. And Cedar Oak has some room. It's not a particularly large ramp as well. The loss of a boat ramp here in this area now, a loss in that location, is going to make it darn difficult, particularly if in some future year, which I hope will occur, we start to improve some of our fishing opportunities that are here, and I think that's going to happen in the next few years. We're going to need more access to the river, and I think we can provide it. You showed some alternatives. I actually went down and have walked that entire park looking for opportunities. I think there are a couple of them, but I think the one you identified there is a good location. It doesn't have to impact per se the wave or anything like that. You're going to have some issues with parking and some other things, but I think we do need access to that river. It would be a shame to be the place that has river on two sides of you and no way to get a boat to it other than going to somebody else's park to put it in. That doesn't seem appropriate to me, not when the fishing is right there in front of you. So I think we've got that opportunity. I'll save my comments about the RV park and others for later, but I think there is a lot of good reasons that you want to maintain the opportunity to get at that river. And to use, someone said, well, there aren't many boats going in there now. Well, that's because the boat ramp isn't frankly usable. There's a couple people in this room could launch there, but you're going to take your life in your hands to, maybe you could launch, you might not get back on your trailer at that location. So to use the current use of that boat ramp is not a good measure of what is occurring or what has occurred there in the past when that ramp was particularly usable. There were a lot of people putting boats in there, so thank you.
So can I'm not sure who is speaking, but I'm totally on board with his comment about providing enough boat access. But so I just have a very specific question. My question is, gentlemen, or to anyone here, is there was some talk there about moving the RV park, which I actually think is a great thing in itself. But if that thing got moved, there's a whole shoreline there that could, I guess, is there some reason that could not be used for an alternative boat launch? Anyone?
So, yeah, so you're talking about launching into the Willamette versus continuing to launch into the Clackamette.
Yeah, but yes, is that an issue?
It's something that's been brought up before and been studied on a number of occasions. It's, in some ways, it looks like a viable option, but from what we've heard from other studies, it's just there's a lot of woody debris that lands right there, which really complicates boat launching. And then there's just other hydrological issues which make launching more difficult. And then I guess just one other thing to consider is the complications of the RV park being in the floodplain would be traded for a boat parking or boat launch being.
I see. But so I guess you brought up a good point, which is, you know, confluences, like, for example, where the boat ramp is, you know, very close to the confluence, those are very dynamic areas, as you know, hydrologically, and they're always going to change. That's why this boat ramp is, you know, being decommissioned. So I guess I'm not quite sure why, you know, some mention was made of the Cove. I don't really understand, or Meldrum Bar, which are away from those dynamic areas. Can you comment on that? Maybe, and including the gentleman who was asking for more boat access, which I, you know, you can't argue with. What about those two areas? What is there some limitation there?
Was your question in terms of launching from the Cove itself?
Yeah, either from the Cove or from Meldrum Bar. You know, the general question here is starting with a premise that the confluence itself, which is where the existing boat ramp is always going to be problematic because of the dynamic nature of a confluence. You know, finding another place in that in the general area. You know, what I don't really,
Yeah.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I think the launches that you mentioned right now, I think have size limitations. I think what was really appreciated about the boat launch when it was functioning was the ample amount of parking and trailer access to the river. I think tonight's meeting, we're trying to focus on kind of elements that people would like to see in the park. And I think next time we'll actually be bringing concepts, which will have really a variety of options, both for river access, but for the park itself. And so I think we'll probably be able to get into a little bit more specificity in terms of location for these elements, what's working, what doesn't, short-term, long-term, at that meeting.
Am I green light? All right. So I am a big proponent of the wave there at that boat ramp, but I would say to what this gentleman said, you know, I'm born and raised here in Oregon City, and I use that boat ramp for other recreational activities prior to ever surfing or kayaking there. And I do think it would be a shame to lose an access site for boats you know, if it's feasible to do it and make it all work, you know, and I assume when you're talking about launches and you had the map up there, you didn't show the launch at Willamette, in Willamette, I guess it's called Westland now. And I assume that's because it's more of a different type of recreation, and we're mainly talking about like fishing access.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the fish don't go up there, but I just noticed it wasn't listed on your boat launches within, you know, so I just thought I would get some clarity on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think having a motorized boat access is.
Right. I have three.
Okay. Online then?
Yes. Karen?
Okay, I'm gonna mark this down. I can't tell who has been speaking when, but I will say going on 60 years of recreating at that park, launching boats, and growing up in the days when you could actually dredge. I think that the access to the Clackamette as a boat launch has passed its time. And I don't think we're going to get back the ability to dredge. The Clackamette River likes to move rock downstream. Being able to get in a kayak or a canoe or a wakeboard is different than being able to back a boat down into the water. Because the last years of my life with my father, when we launched boats down there, we barely got the boat out and switched over to Milton Bar. So I'm still not really clear that this needs to be a place where you can launch a motorboat. The RV park is something I hadn't mentioned. I used to work for the Chamber of Commerce for several years. There is nowhere to come to Clackamette County and recreate along the river if you have an RV. If you're traveling in your RV, you can go to county parks, but nowhere near the Willamette or the Clackamette other than in Canby. That park is popular for people who want access to the river along there. And it is, I think it is important to tourism in Oregon City and Clackamette County. But the ability to recreational boating, and as I'm looking at this right now, these wonderful shots of the kids and kayaks and you name it. You can launch them without having the hardscape that we've created to allow motorized boats to be launched and then park the vehicle and the trailer. And I think those times have passed for this park because I don't think we're going back to the old dredging days. And
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for your comments. You're online.
There's two more. Yep. Okay. Jeremy?
I'm Jeremy's 11-year-old son, and I've been surfing at the Clackamette River Wave all summer long. And like he said earlier, it's been the highlight of my summer. And I think we could just relocate it down at what you said earlier, number 2, down there. If we just keep the lower part of the boat ramp underwater, and cut out the top, because that would be best for the community, because people would be able to back their boats down and get river access and still be able to surf with the wave.
Jeremy, I have a question for you. So what's the best time of year to surf the wave?
It's usually like in the middle of summer where the tide is very low, and just when the river gets very low. So usually in the summer, like, yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. That really helps out. Thanks so much.
Tim?
Thank you. I have to agree with Karen in regards to the dredging, but I do have a question on dredging. I heard at one time Oregon City had a permit to dredge the channel up to the cove. Is that permit still valid? And is there a chance that you could go ahead and dredge the river? And I have another question too. But the only way that I could see a boat ramp at the Clackamette Park is to build out a wrap wall or cut into the bank like the Barton launch up there. So what they have done is cut out a big, huge chunk into the existing wall of the river, and it makes for a sheltered spot so that you could launch in calm water. That would solve a lot of problems, but it indeed does require a lot of digging out of land. And I was wondering if you have explored any of that.
Yes, to your first question, in terms of the ability to dredge and if there's a permit existing, we've been in contact with the Marine Board pretty frequently and Fish and Wildlife, and that's not something that's come up at all, and they've studied this pretty extensively. That is not on the table at this point. To your second idea, just that much in-water work, I have to admit, I'm not familiar with the launch that you're describing up at Barton, but it's pretty complicated. I'm not sure if that would be allowable at this location, but we can definitely circle back on that.
Well, I guess if you want to go to the next slide, and I want to talk about next steps, but I want to make sure that because we still have a little bit more time, if there's anything that we have not covered that you'd like to talk about, whether you'd like to see it in the park or anything that we should be thinking about as we develop these different concept options, we'd love to hear from you. So, and then certainly if there's something that comes up after this meeting, I think there's contacts that you can contact with the city to express some additional views. Certainly taking the survey, if you haven't taken that, that would be helpful at all. But anything else we should know before we begin to talk about next steps?
Walking our dogs coming in from the south side down by the hotel. And I know when people were talking about greenscape and scenic quality and open spaces, I guess I just wasn't aware that that south end was still part of the park. Mm-hmm. It seems to be kind of forgotten in a way, and it seems like that could be a focus of creating more green space and, maybe hitting some of those ideas and points that you guys were talking about. So I'm sure you guys are looking at that area over there, but, growing up my whole life here, when I got down there, I wasn't even aware that was part of the park. It seems to be, like I said, just kind of forgotten over there.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Good point, and it does, Park runs all the way to what then turns into John Storm Park. So
I might embarrass myself here, but last time I was down at the park, there was only a swing set. As far as for the play equipment, unless something has improved. What's that? It's limited, okay.
Yeah.
So there's only a swing set.
Yeah,
If we could do something there and actually have a play structure there and then increase the activities for the little kids and stuff, I think that would be great too.
generally, there's only one thing you can do with the swing set. Anything else, just online?
Nope,
Okay.
nobody online.
Well, great. Well, let me just, first of all, thank everyone for coming here, both online and then also in person. It's be here and be with you all. Next steps, I kind of briefly mentioned, but we're going to take all this information. There's another 2 weeks left for the survey. We're at 370. We want to get to 400, I think. 400 is a good goal. So please send that out if you haven't had a chance. And then we'll be getting back together. It'll be in the spring, so we'll need a little bit of time to take all this information, consolidate it. It's something that we'll send out as well. We'll let people know kind of the results of the survey. And then next time we get together, we'll have 3 different ideas, 3 different approaches. We'll have that online as well for you to take a look at. And not only will we have kind of the park elements, but we'll also have some park images of what this park can. So really appreciate your time tonight. Have a good evening, and I hope to see you both here personally and also online at our next meeting. Oh, yeah, and let me just mention, there are some little notepads or things on the back table. If you want to hang out for a little bit, fill those out. Just anything you want to kind of emphasize, I'd appreciate it. But you can also feel free to email the city with the address that we have up on the screen now.
Those of you on Zoom, there's a link to the survey, a QR code there.
Thank you again. Have a good evening. Hey. Okay. Thank you so much.